Get the pro treatment and design your very own custom Rawlings glove just like your favorite big league stars. Choose from countless patterns, web types, lace colors, and more to showcase your unique personal style. Start with a pro design and change it up with your team colors or build yours completely from scratch with your name, number, and state flag. Visit rawlings.com to design your custom glove today. Welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan. Today, I'm here with the longest-tenured Division I coach in New England, Charlie Hickey of the Central Connecticut State Blue Devils. Coach Hickey, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, anytime, Dan.
Yeah, first, I'll kind of start off with that. I was surprised to see that somebody tweeted that out the other day of like top 10 tenured coaches in college baseball, and you were kind of definitely the top one in New England. I think you were in the top 10 overall. What does that mean to you to kind of be in this profession for so long? And, how have you seen it change? Now you hear everybody talking about the transfer portal and the way the college game has changed with NIL money and all that stuff. How has it changed? And how do you feel about being in college baseball for so long?
Well, been awfully fortunate. Had a chance to break into the game at Providence College and spent 8 terrific years there. And obviously it was a long time ago, but that was when they dropped baseball for Title IX issues. But this opportunity at Central Connecticut became available, and I was able to move back home, so to speak. And it's been neat. Sort of thinking about that this morning, walking into the office, that I've been coaching here longer than the kids on my team have been alive. So that does shake you up a little bit. But it's always great being around college kids and going to a baseball field every day has been a neat way to spend your day and be able to call it work sometimes.
Yeah. And now you guys are getting started here at the end of February. What is this time of year like for you? I would imagine, there's probably some anxiety about, some of these guys are going to be in big spots for the first time in your program, at least. You're kind of counting on guys that maybe haven't had that track record of success at the college level quite yet. What are kind of the feelings as you're heading into opening day?
Yeah. Well, it's, we take a different path that most other teams, especially the New England teams. Back in the day, no one ever played in February. March 1st was the day to play. Different rules and different start dates that were created sort of worked backwards, where all the northern teams have to travel to play. We prefer to, be patient and sort of wait until that last weekend of February and play. It gets a little frustrating because, other teams are playing. Our softball team just got on a bus to go to Virginia, and we're staring at a foot of snow. But we'll be all right. We're going to spend the next 10 days still working on some things. Hopefully the weather breaks in the next 5 or 6 days and we can get outside. But it's been old school college baseball where we've been trying to simulate game activities in the gym. We have facilities that allow us to do a lot of different things, but it's not the same. But we realize that the work we put in now hopefully will allow us to be playing in June.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult recruiting in the Northeast when there is a foot of snow on the ground and guys are, is it difficult to find times to get guys on recruiting trips and show them like, hey, this is a baseball school, even though, if you look at your track record in the conference, you guys are as competitive as any other team in New England, but is it difficult to get guys to come here when, they might be looking at other places down south or other D1 programs that have better weather conditions for baseball?
Sure. No, that reality hasn't changed in 30 years, know, but you're going to find kids that are a little bit more grounded, understand the battles of what it takes to play up here, and having had success allows us to get our message to them, and finding those kids that want to be a part of this type of program has been, the challenge and the excitement. We get a little bit of a bounce back from a kid not being in the right situation originally, but when they do get here, they understand that there's not a lot of frills, but there's going to be a lot of wins.
Yeah. What type of player, like, how do you identify someone that this is a good guy for the Northeast or a New England school? Like, because he's, I don't know, relentless or hard work. Like, what is it? What are the characteristics you see that say he could succeed here?
The one thing that's happened nowadays is you don't get to see the kid play in as many games. The recruiting is by showcase or by clinic type of baseball. The old days of watching a kid play the game for 3-4 days in an American Legion tournament are gone. I've always been someone that looked at a kid whose uniform was dirty, and those type of kids that showed up first, that were there, and unselfish teammates, and you don't see that in the showcase events anymore. So you have to try to dig further and further. And the other reality that's come is the recruiting game has sped up so fast that more kids have decided where they're going prior to their junior year of high school is crazy. And it's part of the reason why there's thousands of names in the portal. And finding the kids that can be patient, that this generation of kids don't ever not play. They don't sit on a team and watch the game. They don't have to wait their turn. A lot of them are all playing at a U15 level or U17 level. So every kid is playing. With the college baseball scene right now, kids are walking into a situation where they're going to have to wait at least 2 years to play. And that gets frustrating. Everybody wants to blame the coach for that. But the reality of the rosters being a little bigger and more depth and the ability to add older kids throughout the tenure has really played on the younger kids. But, that's the reality they're in. And that's what we're going to try to develop through this year. We have a couple of kids who have waited their 2 years and it's time to play. Now they're going to go out and produce.
Yeah, we actually just did a story on the impact of the transfer portal on college baseball in New England, and even at the high school and prep levels with the recruiting. Like you said, there aren't as many spots available for guys coming out of high school. It's impacted pretty much every level of baseball. What's your philosophy? When we were doing that story, we were kind of looking around at the New England programs and seeing how coaches or coaching staffs are recruiting through the portal. We mentioned Northeastern, I think this year has 8 transfers and 7 incoming freshmen, like natural freshmen. What's your philosophy about recruiting through the portal? How do you do it at Central Connecticut?
Well, I think you're still trying to recruit both ways.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, you would try it through the junior college ranks, but now when you're getting these proven good players at the Division II and Division III level that can come and play right away, it's crazy not to look at it. You still like the young kid, but what COVID taught us was that the 23-year-old is a different player than the 17-year-old. They're more mature academically, they're more mature physically, and as coaches are, we get greedy. We want to play better players. So that sort of has taken over. Now the COVID factor is done. I don't think there's that 6th or 7th year, or there aren't that many out there anymore. So now you're going to go back to developing the younger kids. But, when you can add, those 2 or 3 important spots that you're vulnerable, you're going to hope to fill that way. We lost 2 of our top pitchers this past year, and that's a void 170 innings that you lose, that you can replace some of them with your staff, but you also got to be able to bring in people that can contribute on the weekend right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned earlier when you're recruiting, that showcase stuff doesn't always show you what you're looking for in terms of, guys aren't, uh, the uniforms aren't dirty. A lot of the pitchers are pitching one inning and just trying to hit these high velo marks. Um, where are you trying to see guys in person? Like, what's the best opportunity to do that where you see, guys showing up at the field early, or you see the way they interact with teammates, and, that you see their competitiveness because they're actually trying to win the game rather than showcase.
And well, I still value the high school coach.
Yep.
They've been beaten up a little bit over the years because they may not be selling the player as well as some of the travel ball game can. I like to bring them into and sit them down in your office, and talk to them about baseball and academics. And you want them to come and see you practice. I try to recommend that to as many kids in high school to get out and see a college baseball practice and understand the intensity that you're looking for and match that up for what you want in your career. I think that's the hardest thing for kids to make a decision when they're sophomores in high school, trying to comprehend the work and the effort that, a lot of good baseball programs in the Northeast, but they take a lot of commitment and hard work, and coaches want to win.
Yeah. And do you have a timeline? Like, a lot of these are a lot of our audiences, high school and prep parents and players who want to figure out how to get to these D1 programs, or even, now it's D2, D3, are very competitive, or probably more competitive maybe than they were a decade or two ago too, because of so many older players being recruited at the college level. But do you have a timeline? Like, so the NCAA rule is as of August 1st, this last August 1st, you could start recruiting for 2027 prospects. Do you get right into that right away, or do you prefer to wait a little bit longer? Are you still working on bringing in 2027 prospects right now? Like, what's your recruiting timeline look like? Or is it not as structured? You kind of do it differently.
No, it's not what we're built for in terms of our success. In terms of the region, the kids that if they're jumping up on these recruiting lists and by their sophomore, junior year, there are a lot of programs that are going to take their pick, so to speak, of those players. We try to identify somebody who fits our program and our model that might not throw it as hard, might not run it as that fast. And everybody's working awfully hard out there. There's a lot of quality programs throughout the Northeast that there aren't many coaches that are missing these players, but finding the ones that match for what we are, takes a little while, takes a little effort. But it's still the funnest part of the game when you're bringing a young kid and his family into your office and making him part of your program. That success is what drives all of us.
Yeah. I wanted to go over the playing schedule, the practice schedule, kind of the training schedule for a Division I program. And obviously it's different from D2 and D3. You have more time, with players each week. You also have a lengthier season. And so you look at high school and prep guys, a lot of those guys are kind of building throughout the spring. And then a lot of the recruiting happens with their travel programs in the summer and early fall. They seem to take, a lot of guys shut it down in the winter. And then right about this time of year, they start trying to build back up for the spring. But it's almost seems like the prime time where they want to be executing at the highest level is probably summer for high school guys, or even early fall. At the college level, especially D1, you see a lot of, especially pitchers, will hit their innings limit in the spring, or going in, into June, and then they might even shut it down over the summer. And then I know at the D1 level, there's a little bit of a fall season. You can play a couple of scrimmages or exhibition games. And then what does the winter look like? What does the D1 schedule look like for athletes?
Well, just to tip it off, the fall segment of our school calendar or our academic year is the best time of year. You know, you're talking about being able to go out and play when it's 70 degrees, 80 degrees. You're able to go out there and practice and work with kids. A lot of them don't do a lot of that because they're always playing. Um, but you can get a kid for 6 weeks to practice every day and approach the game the right way, without the ordeal and pressure of winning and losing. It's a great time of year to see kids develop and be fresh. Now, you're right. The pitching at that stage, you have to be smart, and you have to balance how much you want to see. But for position players, it's terrific. And then nowadays with facilities on campus and facilities off campus, the position player doesn't get out of shape anymore. They don't go more than 3 days without swinging. So they're constantly able to get reps in, especially from an offensive standpoint. Not as much so defensively. That's just a little bit lack of attention to it. But they're able to work through that and prepare for the season. And what you try to balance is some time off for your pitchers. But again, you're cranking them back up in January, right after the first of the year, probably. And you see a bunch of teams going to be playing February 13th. And the balance of, how do you get started, before you can build up some pitch counts and into your conference weekend, has always been a little bit of the challenge. But you can see such a trend in the last 15 years on how good the Northeast is able to play earlier in the year than perhaps 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We used to try this crazy 10-day trip, play 11 games, and think you could pitch against those teams down south. And inevitably you came back 2-9, trying to figure out, how that made you better, but teams are better prepared. Scheduling is done better. Teams are able to go on a weekend basis where they're going to able to run out their top 7, 8 arms more often than the bottom 5. So it's definitely made this part of the country better prepared to play throughout the whole year, even though we're playing so much earlier.
Yeah, and you guys are on a great run of success here recently in your tenure as the Central Connecticut State coach. You've got 9 Northeast Conference tournament championships. And then recently you've been on a run. You won in 17, 19, 21, 23, 25. And there wasn't even a conference tournament in 2020. So you've basically won like 3 out of the last 5 of years that finished with a conference tournament title. Is the approach to the season any different when you're coming off a run of success like that? Do you have to motivate guys any differently, or is defending the title? Do you take a different approach to that?
No, I think it's obviously something we take pride in. Winning championships here. That is going to be our ticket to the NCAA tournament. We're never going to be a conference that gets at-large bid, so it's part of preparing yourself. One thing that we're staring at, we're going to open up down at Florida A&M in 2 weeks, but that following Friday, we're going to play a conference game, and that's after only playing 5 non-conference games.
At home,
probably not ideal, but we have 11 conference weekends. So we're playing 33 conference games, allows you to be able to grind it out a little bit. I don't expect to be playing our best baseball that first weekend, but you got to battle. You try to win a series and get some momentum. So when you do hit, April 1st, you haven't dug yourself a hole. That's just sort of our approach right now. We're in a little bit of a cycle that we've lost some good players that have helped us win those championships. Some of those guys have, played in 2 NCAA regionals, that we've lost. So that's probably the biggest thing that we're addressing right now. There's a lot of inexperience. Our whole infield will be running out there, in all honesty, for the first time. And, they've worked hard. I believe they're talented enough, but it's time to put some games under their belt and see how productive and how successful they can be.
Yeah. You mentioned the NCAA regional. I was wondering this the other day, and I wonder what you think, because you've got plenty of experience playing there. Has it gotten more difficult for mid majors or small, smaller conferences like the Northeastern or the Northeast Conference to compete in a regional when some of these SEC schools or ACC schools now, they have NIL money, they have unlimited scholarships. I don't know how many you're using. All of you're allowed to use as many scholarships as you want now. I don't know how many actually are doing it, but do you think it's gotten more difficult for mid-major programs to have success in the NCAA regionals?
Ultimately, I would say yes, and I could just speak to our experiences. We've gone into some very special places where college baseball is amazing in different parts of the country. And over the years, we've always looked at our dugout and thought that, what, maybe I got 6, maybe I got 7 players that could be in their lineup, but they got 35 of them, and the depth that they have, they're commended for, the environments that they're able to play in. We played University of Arkansas on Friday afternoon. There were 12,000 people there, and none of them left after the 5th inning, and, we were at the University of South Carolina and just recently at Auburn University, where they're just great atmospheres, great facilities, great crowd bases. We were able to play and compete, but ultimately, unless it's a special year and you have the depth on the pitching side, that it's hard to hold up against those teams in that environment. And they're pretty good too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when you're watching those College World Series games, the velocity these guys are throwing, 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And there was actually a study, MLB did a study maybe a year or two ago, correlating the rise in velocity to more injuries, more Tommy John surgeries, things like that. At the high school prep level, you mentioned those showcase events where guys are pitching 1 inning and they're trying to get big velocity readings in front of scouts and recruiters and things like that. Has that become a problem, do you think? Do you think the rise, the focus on velocity has become a problem that's led to injuries?
I definitely think there's a correlation. I definitely think the amount of throwing the young kids are doing throughout the year now, and we're guilty for some of it, whether colleges are holding these showcase clinics during the winter months, and you expect the kid to get up there and say, hey, don't worry about the velocity, don't worry about it, and then you stick a radar gun in his face. You definitely send mixed messages. I was talking to somebody in the fall of the emails that you get now from prospective kids. They rarely tell you what their win-loss record is. Rarely do you see a kid that was 9-1 his junior year in high school, and pitched in the state championship game. They want to tell you what their latest velocity was or their latest spin rate, and I may be old school, but I think winning still matters. So those are the type of kids that we're going to try to sift through a little bit. Like I said, there are some obviously prominent schools in our part of the country that are going to beat us in the recruiting game, but we're going to try to find what's successful for our level, and guys that can pitch and play the game. They may not necessarily be as high draft choices as other programs can exist, but again, I enjoy winning, and we try to find the kids that can win for us.
Yeah. Well, you need 5 innings to get the win on the mound, and
That's
you
true.
don't have a lot of guys pitching 5 anymore at the high school or prep level. Netting professionals and Stadionic are proud to be the official netting partners of the Cape Cod League and the New England Collegiate Baseball League. Together, netting professionals and Stadionic are in the sports facility business of improving athletic programs, one facility at a time. Netting Professionals designs, fabricates, and installs custom netting, wall padding, windscreens, batting practice equipment, and more for high schools, colleges, commercial facilities, and stadiums across the United States. Stadionic complements that work by helping programs plan, build, and elevate sports facilities with a focus on performance, safety, and long-term value, all while delivering high-quality products and outstanding service throughout the New England area. Remember, when it comes to netting and building iconic sports facilities, it's Netting Professionals and Stadionic. Coach, do you have time to hang in there for our 3 Up, 3 Down segment? It's just a fun segment where we talk about stuff that helped you fall in love with the sport of baseball.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Let me introduce you to our producer, David Yaz.
3 Up, 3 Down.
3 Up, 3 Down is a segment where I have 3 questions for both of our panelists here. Coach, you're the guest, so we'll start with you. And I don't know if this is an easy question or not, but let's pose it. You could argue that the notion of rooting for a baseball team is irrational. We are cheering on the fates of people that we don't know, we'll probably never meet, and really doesn't probably mean that much in the grand scheme of humankind, and yet we do it passionately. So why then, Coach, do we root for our favorite baseball team?
Well, I don't think my story is any different or better, but I think you grow up with your parents and your father and your siblings, that initially that's the easiest thing that you could have conversations with about. I can remember, calling my dad at like midnight the year the Red Sox finally won the World Series, stuff that you'd never done in your life before. But
Coach, can I tell you, I did the same thing. I did the exact.
Yeah.
I said, Dad, thanks for raising me a baseball fan.
And where we live and die with that Red Sox on our back. The opportunity to see more different players and players changing teams is sort of taken a little bit that different than what we all grew up with, or I grew up with. But I can always attest to thinking that was the first memories and the best memories you had with your father.
It's a great answer, Dan. I don't know how you're possibly going to follow that, but give it a shot. Why do we root?
I think he's right on the money there. I think it's you grow up and you are you remember cheering on this team with your dad and your family and people, your friends from growing up. You're all supporting the same team. And even it doesn't happen, like Coach said, it doesn't happen often where guys are in the same place for 10 or 15 years anymore. But it does, there is always the 1 or 2 guys who have, long careers in the same place. So, you can't give up on them, just because you go to college and you relocate to a different area. You're like, well, I love that guy. He won a World Series for us in whatever year. I'm still rooting for him on that team. And then you get to know the new guys and you just kind of stick with that team, even if you relocate to a different area of the country. But I think it is, you have memories of supporting that team with your dad and your high school friends or everybody growing up, and you don't really want to give up on that, even if you're in a new area of the country.
Someone should tell Tom Brady that, part of for a long time. It doesn't hurt to throw him a little bone when they're in. At any rate, Dan, you'll go first on this next question. Complete change of pace here. It's Game 7 of the World Series, and you're the manager, and it's a key situation, and you need to pinch hit someone who's going to come through with a base hit, not a home run. You just need a base hit to win this game. But the twist is you can pick any player in the history of mankind, alive or dead, in their prime. Who are you going to call up to get that base hit?
Well, anyone, I probably would do like a Reggie Jackson, just because, Mr. October had so many World Series memories. He's kind of clutch, he's performed in that spot before. I don't know why he would be on the bench in Game 7 of the World Series.
This is fantasy baseball, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, we'll bring him out off the bench and let him take some swings. Yep.
Okay, going with Reggie. All right, Coach, how about you?
Well, it's funny. You just gave me too much time to overthink this. I'm not a big believer in pin hitting. I'll say that. But I'd like to have Ken Griffey Jr. up if I had a chance.
Nice. That's not a bad choice at all. And Griff was so great, and you can say his body broke down towards the end, maybe a little bit sooner than we would have hoped, but he was kind of the last great pre-steroid era player. So he was, I mean, who knows if that's true, but, and such a natural. He was one of the few guys that I sort of quietly rooted for, even against the Red Sox, because he was such a joy to watch.
Didn't they determine that the motivation for Bonds getting on steroids was watching Ken Griffey?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, like put up huge numbers and a sweet swing. And he was like, I could do that too.
Ironic. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Final question for 3 Up, 3 Down. And Coach, we go back to you. What would you say was the golden age of baseball? And this is a 2-part question. And is there any hope that we'll return to that? What was the golden age? And is there hope that we might get back there?
Yeah. When your first question triggered that conversation or that memory that I had sharing with my father, I then thought of, I can remember coming in, I was a freshman in high school coming in from football practice, and my dad was in the parking lot, and he had to tell me that some guy named Bucky had just beaten the Red Sox, and, we all remember, or I remembered where I was that day. I love the idea, and even a few years removed when the Red Sox and the Yankees were playing one of those infamous series when, they had the brawl at home plate. I wish the World Series could get back to being played in the day, and I don't know with the television money and the contracts, but I'd love to be able to turn on the TV at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and watch playoff baseball, and bring it back a little bit.
I think you're talking.
Maybe I'm hoping for something that's not part of reality, but I think we all had memories of growing up with baseball and the playoffs being during the day.
Interesting suggestion. Yeah, I think the brawl you're talking about is the one. Fisk and Munson, I think, were both involved, and I think Billy ended up with a broken arm at the end of that thing. But man, yeah, the Red Sox and Yankees just hated each other, and there's no reason why they can't be chummy like they are now. I guess A-Rod and Poppy are best friends now. I guess, but man, Sox and Yankees used to hate each other. All right, Dan, your thoughts on what was the golden age, and can we ever get back there?
Yeah, golden age for me. So I graduated college in 2002. So I don't know much, before the 80s, certainly, and even like the first half of the 80s. I don't really remember much about baseball. So my golden age, it was either 1998 when they had the home run chase for Roger Maris's record. So that was McGuire, Sosa. Griffey was in there for a while. He didn't end up getting to 60. So it was either 1998 or I moved to Boston in 2002. And that was like the height of Red Sox Yankees. 2003 was obviously the Yankees won the ALCS. 2004 was the Red Sox won the World Series. And just being in Boston for that was the golden era for me. I'd go down to Fenway and just watch in bars because I couldn't afford tickets to games right out of college. But I loved it. Loved being around Fenway and feeling that energy in 2003, 2004.
Do you think the game can get back to something like that?
I do think it's gotten, I like the changes they've made with pitch clock and kind of speeding things up and getting it in and out of the game in 2.5 hours or so. I think all those are good improvements. So yeah, I don't see why not. You get a couple of really good rivalries. Ohtani has definitely been a boost for the sport. So yeah, I think can get back to a golden age.
Yeah. it certainly felt like a golden age of sorts in this past World Series. That I can't remember in recent memory a more entertaining World Series than that. So
yeah,
you both did very well in 3 Up, 3 Down. I'm going to see what I can do to get you both Ken Griffey Jr. bobblehead dolls if they're still out there. We'll see. Thanks very much. Well done, Coach. And back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
Okay, thanks so much to Coach Hickey for joining us on the Base Path podcast. You can subscribe to your podcast on your preferred network. All of our podcasts are also streamed on YouTube. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path podcast is a Siemens Media production.